Under the copper hush of evening, when the prairie grasses bent like weary pilgrims and the sky bled into violet, a woman walked alone on the dirt road that led from town. Nokomi's greyhawk, tall and proud despite the ache that time had stitched into her bones, moved as though each step carried the weight of years too heavy to set down. Her white hair, unbound and caught by the wind, shimmered like silver thread unraveled from the loom of the moon. People whispered about her in hushed tones, about the widow who outlived her youth, who no longer smiled at men, who had locked her heart away behind jars of herbs and the dim oil lamp of her apothecary. And perhaps they were right, for Nokomis had once believed in love so fiercely it nearly burned her alive, and when it was snatched from her, she convinced herself that such fires were never meant to be rekindled. She told herself the world had already taken what was hers. Yet some part of her, though buried deep, still ached when the night wind carried the lowing of cattle across the valley, or when laughter from the saloon carried up the hill. Could the years really erase longing, or had she only grown skilled at masking it? She wondered, and then scolded herself for wondering at all. It was on such an evening that fate, stubborn and untamed, decided to intrude. He came riding from the west, the sound of his stallion's hooves rolling like distant thunder across the earth. Colt McGraw, giant of a man, broad as the canyon cliffs, shoulders squared against the horizon. 31 years old, yet his face carried the restless lines of one who had searched too long for something unnamed. The son of a cattle baron, rich by inheritance though his hands were blistered from work he refused to leave to hired men, Colt had everything the world insisted a man should want. But there was a hollowness in him, carved not by poverty, but by waiting. He had lived surrounded by women eager for his smile, yet none had held him long. Why, then, did his gaze, steady and unshakable, fall upon Nokomis with the weight of recognition, as though she were the very thing his restless soul had been searching for? Their meeting was quiet, unceremonious. He stepped into her apothecary, hat lowered in respect, the smell of rain-soaked leather trailing behind him. A cut across his palm bled into the dust he carried on his skin. She cleaned it without a word, her hands steady though her heart betrayed her with a trembling she thought herself long past. He did not watch the wound being stitched. His eyes stayed fixed on her face, as if each line, each shadow, each strand of silver hair was a map leading him somewhere he had been lost from since boyhood. And she, though she refused to lift her gaze, felt it, the way his silence was not absence but presence, deep and unrelenting. Why, she asked herself, did a man like this see her at all? After he left, she tried to forget him. Yet the next morning, a small bundle of wildflowers lay across her porch step. No note, no explanation. Just blossoms fresh from the field, their stems damp with dew. She told herself it was a courtesy, a passing kindness. But when the same flowers appeared again days later, and again after that, her heart betrayed her with its quickened pace. She began to dread and long for the sound of approaching hooves outside her shop. She found herself setting aside an extra jar of salve, an extra pouch of herbs, things he never asked for, but which gave her an excuse to press them into his calloused hands. And when he took them, his eyes softened with something she dared not name. Was this merely charity, or was something far more dangerous unfolding between them? The town noticed. They always did. Whispers slithered through the saloon like smoke. She's too old for him. Someone sneered over a spilled drink. Winter widow clinging to spring. Nokomis heard. She always heard. And though she told herself she was long immune to such cruelty, it cut. It reminded her of the mirror she avoided, of the white strands she had ceased to braid, of the lines that deepened when she frowned. That night she almost barred her door against him, almost decided to end whatever fragile thread tethered them. Yet when she saw him in the saloon, standing in silence against the corner wall, and when his hand steadied hers after she faltered under the weight of their stares, she felt something louder than mockery. The unspoken vow in his silence, the refusal to let go. Why did his quiet presence feel more defiant than any shouted defense? Still, shame clung to her like dust. She walked alone to the riverbank, where the moonlight turned the current silver, and confessed to the water what she would tell no one: that she was too old, too worn, too late. Her voice cracked as though the truth itself had teeth. When Colt appeared, she did not turn to him. She told him to go. He did not argue. He only laid his coat around her shoulders and stood with her in silence. And when she finally looked at him, she found no pity in his eyes, only a fierce tenderness that unsettled her more than cruelty ever had. What could she possibly give a man who had his whole life still stretching wide ahead of him? Days bled into weeks. She caught herself humming as she swept the shop, caught herself wearing her late mother's turquoise earrings again. He began fixing things that were broken, the fence around her herb garden, the step that had sagged for years. Always without asking, always gone before she could thank him properly. He taught her to ride again, coaxing laughter from her lips when she nearly lost her balance. These were not grand gestures. They were small, steady offerings, brick by brick, building something she had thought demolished long ago. Was she fooling herself, or was love not a wildfire at all, but the slow warmth of embers refusing to fade? The storm came suddenly, fierce as if the heavens themselves conspired to strip away her last defense. Rain pounded the apothecary windows. Thunder cracked across the hills. Nokomis rushed to secure her shutters when Colt burst through the door, drenched, his chest heaving. For a moment, he said nothing, only removed his hat and dropped to one knee as though felled by the very storm outside. He took her weathered hands and pressed them against his chest, where his heart thundered beneath her palm. Not a word passed his lips, yet the silence spoke volumes. Here I am, here I remain, here I choose you. Her tears came then, unbidden, unstoppable. She whispered what she had sworn never to confess aloud, that she thought herself too old for love, too late for joy. He answered not with speech but with embrace, his arms around her like shelter against the storm. In that moment, the years fell away, not erased but honored, like scars made holy by the courage to reveal them. The storm outside raged, but within her something broke free, her fear, her shame, her doubt, leaving only the raw and untamed truth that she had never been too old, only too afraid. They wed quietly soon after, not to silence the town but to honor themselves. No banners, no celebration, only the intimate knowledge that they had chosen one another in a world that often sneered at what it could not understand. And when Nokomis looked upon her silver hair in the mirror, she no longer saw loss but the glow of survival, of years carried with grace. Beside her stood a man who had not come to rescue her youth, but to honor her whole. So, if ever you find yourself believing that love has already passed you by, remember Nokomis standing beneath the storm and the giant cowboy who knelt without a word. For love is not bound by age, nor measured by years, but found in the courage to be seen, fully and without disguise. And perhaps, just perhaps, the storm you think has passed is only waiting at the horizon, riding toward you even now.